My name is Nora Whitaker. I'm 32. A few months ago, at my engagement dinner, my mother let my fiancé give my grandmother's ring to my younger sister. Mark took the ring from the velvet box. He slid it onto Lily's finger. He said, "Your mother was right. A husband should stand with the real daughter." My mother smiled and moved my place card to the end of the table. I laid the empty ring box in the center of my plate. But here's what my mother didn't know. That ring had never belonged to her at all. That is the reason I'm sitting here telling you this. If this sounds familiar, if you have ever been the daughter who was called first when something broke, and last when something was celebrated, stay with me. Like this story and subscribe if you believe being calm does not mean staying available for people who keep moving your chair farther from the table. This story begins before that dinner table, before the place cards, before my fiancé learned how to smile at the wrong woman. It begins with an old hand, a small box, and a promise no one in my family thought I would be brave enough to protect. Let me take you back to the summer my grandmother first put that ring in my palm. The summer I got the ring was the summer my grandmother started walking again. She lived in a pale yellow house at the edge of Westfield, Ohio, with 2 porch steps that turned into a mountain after her stroke. On Tuesdays, I drove over before work, folded her walker into my trunk, and took her to therapy. She hated the walker. She called it that aluminum gossip because everybody looked at it before they looked at her. My family did not call it caregiving, they called it helping out. Helping out sounded light. It sounded like bringing napkins. My mother, Elaine Whitaker, had built our family around appearances that could be mailed in a Christmas card. My younger sister, Lily, photographed well in every season. She had the bright laugh, the clean hair, the easy way of letting adults feel clever. I had the spare key. If a refrigerator leaked, I was called. If Grandma Ruth needed her prescription picked up, I was called. If a chair had to be moved before company came, my mother would point with 2 fingers and say, "Be useful, Nora." In my mother's house, love had a guest room, but usefulness had a key. Back then, I thought it was normal. I thought every family had one daughter for the pictures and one daughter for the mess. After Grandma Ruth's second therapy appointment, she gripped my forearm all the way from the clinic to the car. Her hand was small, but her fingers still had authority. When we got back to her house, I helped her inside, made tea, and set the orange pill bottles in a row by day. My mother arrived 20 minutes later with Lily and a bakery box. Lily kept everyone's spirits up, Mom said, kissing Grandma on the cheek. Lily had been at a yoga class. Grandma looked at me over the rim of her cup. She did not correct my mother in front of Lily. That was not her style. Grandma Ruth could make silence feel like a raised eyebrow. In October, a bill from Ruth's home aide sat unpaid for 12 days because my mother said she had too much on her plate. I paid it with the money I had set aside for new tires. I told myself I would sort it out later. 2 nights after that, Mom took Lily to choose a dress for a hospital fundraiser and told everyone Lily was our steady one through Ruth's scare. I remember standing in the kitchen with a grocery bag cutting into my wrist. I had Ruth's low-sodium soup in the bag. Lily had a satin garment bag over her arm. No one had done anything loud. That was what made it hard to explain. Loud cruelty leaves a bruise people can point to. Quiet cruelty keeps asking why you are so sensitive. By the time Mark Bell came into my life, I should have known how the room worked. Mark was polite at first. He opened doors. He called my mother Mrs. Whitaker, until she told him Elaine was fine. He asked me about my job at the county library, and he listened when I explained how I helped older patrons set up audiobooks and tax forms online. Then he met Lily. He did not fall in love with her in one dramatic moment. That would have been easier to name. He learned the family weather. He noticed who my mother praised. He noticed whose stories got repeated. He noticed that when Lily interrupted me, nobody called it interrupting. They called it being lively. One Sunday dinner, Mark mentioned he had never been to Hilton Head. Lily leaned over the salad bowl and told him she knew the prettiest stretch of beach. My mother smiled at them both. Then she asked me to refill the water glasses. "Be useful, Nora." I picked up the pitcher. I did not spill a drop. It was not strength yet, it was training. Grandma Ruth saw more than she said. In November, after everyone left her house, she asked me to stay. The living room smelled like lemon polish and the peppermint candies she kept in a glass dish. She sat in her chair by the window and patted the cushion beside her. "Open the drawer in that table," she said. Inside was a small velvet box. Not new, not fancy. The hinge gave a tiny, tired click when I lifted the lid. The ring inside was yellow gold, with one square-cut stone and two tiny chips on the band. I had seen it in family pictures. I had seen it on Ruth's hand when she made pie crust, wrote checks, and pointed at game shows as if the contestants could hear her. "I want you to have it," she said. I tried to hand it back. I told her Mom would be upset. I told her Lily might expect it someday. I told her we could talk later. Grandma closed my fingers around the box. "Lily has been given plenty of rooms to stand in," she said. "You stayed in the hallway and still answered when I called." That sentence sat in my chest for a long time. A ring cannot fix a family, but it named something I had been afraid to name for myself. She gave me a small photograph that day too. In it, her hand was over mine, and the box was between us. She had asked a neighbor to take it. I laughed when she told me that. Grandma Ruth shrugged and said a woman should know when a moment needs a witness. I kept the ring in my apartment for 6 months before I wore it. When Mark proposed, he used a plain silver band he bought himself, because he said he wanted our engagement to be simple and clean. A week later, I showed him Grandma's ring. He looked impressed, then careful. He asked if my mother knew. I said she knew Ruth had given it to me. Those were different things. I understand that now. The engagement changed the air in my mother's house. She began speaking about the wedding as if she had been hired to rescue it from my taste. She said my dress should be less library. She said the reception needed a stronger family presence. Lily suddenly had opinions about flowers, cake, music, and where Mark should stand in pictures. Mark laughed at first. Then he started agreeing before I answered. In early March, my mother called and said the ring needed to be cleaned and insured before any family dinner. Her voice had that soft edge she used when she had already decided. "It's Ruth's ring," I said. "It is a Whitaker ring," she said. "Don't make everything lonely." Lonely was a clever word. It made ownership sound selfish. I brought the ring to her house the next afternoon. She stood in the front hall with her palm out, like I was late returning a library book. I placed the ring in its velvet box and told her I wanted it back before the dinner. She smiled. "Be useful, Nora." I kept the empty box sleeve in my coat pocket without thinking. The actual velvet box stayed with her. Later, I would be grateful for that small accident. At the time it was only habit. I saved containers. Librarians save things. After that, Grandma became harder to reach. When I called, Mom answered Ruth's phone. She said Grandma was tired. She said Grandma was mixed up on dates. She said I should not upset her with wedding talk. But Ruth still texted me. Her messages were short. The spelling was perfect. One Thursday night, after Lily sent me a picture of her manicure and asked whether warm ivory looked good with old gold, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my phone until the screen went dark. Then Ruth's message came in. "Don't let them make you smaller at your own table." I read it twice. I did not answer right away. I did not know how to tell my grandmother that I was starting to think my own engagement had a seating chart I had never seen. 2 days later, my mother emailed the dinner plan. It was supposed to be a small engagement dinner. It had 18 people on it. Mark's parents, my mother's sister, 2 cousins who only came when someone opened wine. Lily was seated beside Mark. I was seated near the kitchen door. I called Mark. He let it ring 5 times before he picked up. I asked if he had seen the seating chart. He said my mother was just trying to make the evening flow. I asked why Lily was beside him. There was a pause. "She knows how to keep your mom relaxed," he said. "It is a strange thing, hearing the man who asked to marry you explain why another woman makes your mother easier to love." I did not argue. I asked him one more question. "Where is my ring?" He said, "Your mom has it handled." That answered more than he meant to answer. I drove to Ruth's house the next morning. I did not call first. I did not ask my mother for permission to visit my own grandmother. Ruth opened the door herself after a while, leaning hard on the frame but smiling like she had been expecting me. I helped her to the chair by the window. I made tea. I waited until her hands were steady around the cup. Then I asked, "Grandma, did you tell Mom she could decide who wears your ring?" Ruth looked at me for a long second. "No," she said. "I gave it to you." The room felt very still, but not empty. It felt like a door had finally stopped pretending to be a wall. I told her about the seating chart. I told her about Lily's manicure. I told her Mark said Mom had it handled. Ruth did not raise her voice. She looked toward the side table where the velvet box had once been, and her mouth folded into a line I remembered from my childhood. It was the look she used when someone tried to pass store-bought pie as homemade. "Then I suppose I should come to dinner," she said. I almost said no. I almost protected my mother from the consequence of using Ruth's name. That was my old job. So I sat there until the old answer passed. "Yes," I said. "If you want to," Ruth nodded. "I want to." When I left, she pressed the photograph into my hand again, the one with her hand over mine and the ring box between us. I had forgotten she kept a copy. "Take this one," she said. "People forget less when there is a picture." I put it beside the empty ring box sleeve in my purse. On the drive home, I did not feel brave. I felt awake. Brave feels like music. Awake feels like hearing the smoke alarm before anybody else smells smoke. That night, I texted my mother that I would arrive early for the dinner. She replied in 9 seconds. "Good. Be useful, Nora." I looked at those 3 words for a long time. Then I put my phone face down and packed the photograph, the empty sleeve, and the last kind message my grandmother had sent me. The next time I walked into my mother's house, I would not be arriving as help. I would be arriving as a witness. I went back to Grandma Ruth's house the next morning with a legal pad, 2 pens, and the empty ring box sleeve. It was not dramatic. It was the most ordinary thing in the world. A woman making tea. Another woman sitting by the window. A granddaughter writing down dates because spoken memory was too easy for my mother to call confusion. Grandma Ruth had dressed for the day before I arrived. She wore a blue cardigan with 1 pearl button missing. Her hair was pinned back unevenly, and she had the stubborn look of a person who had needed help but did not intend to be handled. "I am not confused," she said before I asked anything. "I know," I said. "No," she said. "You need to know it in writing." She pointed to a brown folder on the side table. I opened it where she told me to open it. Inside were copies of checks, care bills, pharmacy receipts, and 1 page with my mother's name on it in a place I had never seen before. Elaine Whitaker. Paid family representative. I read that phrase twice. Grandma watched my face. "Your mother said it was easier if one person handled things." "How long?" 2 years. I set the page down carefully. I was angry. And paper is too easy to punish when the person who deserves the anger is not in the room. Grandma explained it in plain pieces. After her stroke, Mom had been allowed to manage certain bills. In return, she received a yearly payment from one of Ruth's accounts for the time and travel. Ruth had agreed because she believed my mother was keeping the family steady. Then the charges changed. Meals for guests. Flowers for family dinners. Linen rentals for events my grandmother had not attended. Grandma tapped 1 receipt with the back of her knuckle. "This one was Lily's bridal shower for her friend," she said. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes the body looks for the wrong door when the room gets too small. My mother was not only holding the ring, she was being paid to stand between Ruth and everyone else. I asked Grandma if she wanted me to call my mother. "No." The answer came fast. "If you call her now," Grandma said, "she will make this about your tone." My grandmother was 84 years old, recovering from a stroke, and still better at reading my mother than any of us, so we did not call Elaine. We made copies. We wrote dates. I took pictures of the folder with my phone, 1 page at a time, with Grandma's hand resting beside each paper. Not on top of it. Beside it. She wanted the picture to show she was present, not dragged into anything. Then she asked me to dial the family attorney. His name was Mr. Adler, but I will call him the attorney because his name is not the important part. He did not sound surprised to hear from Grandma. He did sound careful. He asked her 2 simple questions. Did she understand who was with her? Did she want to change who handled her care account? Grandma answered both. I said very little. Usually I filled silence in my family. I softened hard edges. I explained what everyone meant so no one had to admit what they had done. That morning, I let the silence do its own work. By noon, Grandma had taken the first step. It did not punish my mother. It did not accuse her. It simply put Ruth's own voice back into a room where Elaine had been speaking for her. The attorney said he would bring the final packet to the dinner if Grandma still wanted to attend. He said it the way a person says something twice without repeating it. He wanted to be sure. Grandma looked at me. "I want to attend," she said. The week changed weight after that. I left Grandma's house with the copied receipts in a plain envelope, the photograph of her hand over mine, and a list of numbers that finally made my mother's generosity look less like generosity. I did not drive to Mom's house. I did not send Mark a paragraph. I went to the library, worked my shift, and helped a retired man print his tax form because life has a rude sense of timing. At lunch, I opened a note on my phone and wrote down only facts. Date Ruth gave me the ring. Date Mom took it. Exact words Mom used. Exact seating chart. Exact text from Mark. Your mom has it handled. Facts do not shake when someone calls you dramatic. That afternoon, Lily sent another picture. This one showed her hand on the steering wheel of her car. Her nails were the same warm ivory. There was no ring on her finger yet, but she had angled the picture like she wanted me to look for it. The caption said, "Can't wait for Saturday. Mom says it's going to be unforgettable." For once, Lily was right. I did not answer. I saved the image. 2 hours later, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Then she texted. Need you at the house by 4 Saturday. Caterer is useless. Be useful, Nora. There it was again, the old bell. Before, those words made my body move, before my mind did. I would pick up keys. I would change clothes. I would become available. This time, I looked at the message and waited until my hands stopped wanting to obey. Then I wrote back. I'll be there. Nothing more. The next day, Mark came by my apartment. He had not done that in 2 weeks. He stood outside my door with a grocery store bouquet and the guilty posture of a man hoping flowers could do the work of a spine. We need to keep Saturday calm, he said. I did not invite him in. He looked past me into the apartment. His eyes landed on the empty ring box sleeve on the small table by the door. Your mom said you've been tense. I asked where my ring was. She's handling it. You keep saying that. He shifted the flowers to his other hand. Nora, your mother knows how these family things work. Lily just makes everything easier. There it was. Not love. Convenience wearing a clean shirt. I asked him one question. Are you marrying me or are you joining my mother? He did not answer fast enough. A person can say a lot by reaching for the wrong silence. He finally said, Don't make me choose in a hallway. I stepped back and put my hand on the door. I didn't, I said. You did. Then I closed the door gently. No slam, no speech. The flowers stayed with him. Mark did not need to be stolen. He had already walked. Saturday morning arrived with rain on the windows and 3 missed calls from my mother before 9. The messages got shorter each time. First, she wanted me to confirm the dessert plates. Then she wanted to know if I had picked up the extra candles. Then she sent one line. Do not embarrass this family tonight. I read it in my kitchen while the coffee went cold. I took a screenshot. At 10, the attorney called. He said he had spoken with Grandma Ruth again. He used no complicated words. Ruth knew the date. Ruth knew where she was going. Ruth knew whom she trusted to speak with her, not over her. She asked me to confirm the front steps, he said. Will someone be there to help her in? I will, I said. His voice softened. Then I will bring her at 7:15. Grandma was not being carried into a fight by my anger. She was walking toward a room where her own daughter had been using her name. At noon, I packed my purse. Empty ring box sleeve. Photograph. Copies of the texts. Copies of the receipts. Grandma's message about the table. I did not pack them like weapons. I packed them like weather reports. They did not create the storm. They only proved the sky had changed. Before I left, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and said the sentence I knew I might need. Then let's ask the woman who gave it. I said it once. Again. The second time, it sounded less like courage and more like directions. When I reached my mother's house at 4, she opened the door before I knocked. Her hair was done. Her lipstick was perfect. She looked me up and down the way she used to inspect tablecloths for stains. You're late, she said. I'm on time. She stared for half a beat. She was not used to me correcting the frame that quickly. Then she handed me a list. Ice bucket. Salad forks. Guest towels. Candles in the dining room. Move the coats from the front bedroom. Be useful, Nora. I took the list. That may sound like obedience. It was not. Taking the list let me walk through the house without being questioned. It let me see the dining room. It let me see the place cards. Lily's card sat beside Mark's. Mine sat near the kitchen door. The velvet ring box was not on the table. The ring was still hidden until the moment my mother wanted it seen. I set out salad forks. I folded guest towels. I carried coats. I did the work slowly enough to see everything and quickly enough that my mother could not accuse me of sulking. At 6, Lily came downstairs in a cream dress. She held her left hand carefully, though there was still no ring on it. She wanted the hand noticed before it had anything to show. My sister had learned that lesson well. Mom says tonight is going to fix the tension, Lily said. What tension? She smiled. Don't do that. I placed a candle on the sideboard. What? Act like you don't know when people are trying to help you. For a second, I saw the old Lily. The little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The sister who once asked me to braid her hair so tight it would last through school pictures. Then she looked at my bare hand, and the old Lily disappeared behind the woman my mother had been rewarding for years. Lily, I said, if someone gives you something that was never theirs, it will not make it yours. Her smile thinned. You always make things heavy. No, I said. I just know what they weigh. I stopped there. No warning, no threat. The mechanism stayed covered. At 6:45, the first guests arrived. My mother became bright. Mark became charming. Lily became soft around him, the way women do when they want the room to notice a story before it is announced. I moved through the house with a tray of glasses and counted the chairs. 18 places. 1 table. 1 empty space beside the front door where Grandma's walker would fit. My mother saw me glance at it. Ruth isn't coming, she said. I looked at her. She tires easily, Mom added. There was the lie. Small enough to pass as care. Large enough to carry the whole night. I nodded once. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from the attorney. On our way. I turned the screen off and slid the phone back into my purse. For the first time all week, the room did not feel like a place I had to survive. It felt like a place that had an appointment. At 7 o'clock, my mother's house changed voices. Before that, it had been all movement. Ice in the bucket, coats on the bed, Lily's heels clicking across the hallway, Mark laughing too loudly near the fireplace. My mother saying, "Not there," to me 3 different times without looking at the thing she meant. Then the first real cluster of guests gathered at the dining room door, and the house became a stage. My phone was still warm in my purse. On our way. That message did not make me happy. Happy was too soft a word for it. It made my feet settle under me. It made the tray in my hands feel lighter. Somewhere between Ruth's house and mine, my grandmother had chosen to stop being spoken for. Before this next part, I want to ask you one thing. If you have ever been moved to the end of a family table and told it was for everyone's comfort, comment the word chair. In a few minutes, that chair mattered more than anyone in that room expected. Now, let me take you back inside my mother's dining room. There were 18 places at that table. My mother had counted them out with the satisfaction of a woman arranging proof. Mark's parents were near the center. Lily was placed to Mark's right. My mother sat at the head closest to the kitchen, where she could signal me without turning around. My card was at the far end, 2 seats from the swinging door. The chair beside me was empty, not reserved, not honored, just useful. That was where you put a person who could get up without making anyone else move. The clock over the doorway said 7:04. Ruth was due at 7:15. My mother wanted everyone seated before then. I knew it because she kept checking the hall mirror, not the driveway. She was not waiting for someone to arrive. She was making sure no one important interrupted the scene before it belonged to her. I carried in the salad because my mother pointed at it. I poured water because my mother tapped the pitcher. I smiled when Mark's mother told me the house looked lovely. She did not know I had folded the towels, moved the coats, counted the forks, and checked the candles. She only saw the finished room. My mother preferred finished rooms. They had no fingerprints. The candles were already burning low. That mattered to her. She had chosen the short white ones because they made dinner feel formal without making it feel like a wedding. A wedding could be questioned. A family dinner could be called a misunderstanding. Lily came in last. She did not sit right away. She stood behind her chair with her left hand resting on the back of it. The hand was bare, but every finger looked prepared. Warm ivory nails, soft wrist, a little tilt toward Mark. like a question waiting to be answered in public. Mark stood when she stood. I watched that. Not because I still needed proof. I watched because the body sometimes insists on seeing the last page, even after the ending is obvious. My mother lifted her glass. "I want to thank everyone for coming," she said. "Tonight is about family finding its proper shape." It sounded gracious until you noticed it had a blade inside. She looked at me. "Some changes are hard," she said. "But a family survives when each person accepts the place where she brings the most peace." No one had to ask which person she meant. I put the water pitcher down. My cousin made a small sound into her napkin. Mark's father adjusted his glasses. Lily looked at the tablecloth and smiled like she was trying not to. Then my mother reached into the sideboard drawer. The velvet box was in her hand. Not the sleeve I had kept. The actual box. The one Ruth had placed in my palm months before. Seeing it in my mother's hand did not shock me. By then, the shock had burned off. What remained was a clean, cold attention. Mom carried the box to Mark. "Some rings," she said, "belong with the woman who understands the family she is joining." The sentence should have hurt more. It did not. Maybe there is a point where contempt stops landing, because it has run out of new rooms to enter. Mark opened the box. The ring caught the dining room light. One square stone, two tiny chips on the band. Ruth's ring. My ring. A small thing, suddenly carrying everyone's manners on its back. Mark did not look at me. That was his confession. He turned to Lily, and Lily gave him her left hand before he asked for it. The movement was smooth, practiced. I wondered how many times they had rehearsed it in words without touching. My mother watched them like she had finally fixed a crooked picture. There are humiliations that invite you to perform. Cry here. Stand here. Make them feel large by making yourself break in the right place. I knew that invitation. I had answered it for years by disappearing quietly. Not that night. I looked at the clock above the doorway. 7:12. 3 minutes. My mother kept talking. "Nora has always been dear to us," she said, which is what people say when they are about to prove the opposite. But Mark and Lily share a temperament. A steadiness. A vision for the kind of household our family has always valued. Every word gave her less room to retreat. She thought a crowded room protected her. A crowded room only made the lie heavier. Mark slid the ring halfway onto Lily's finger. I did not move. Aunt Carol whispered, "Elaine." But my mother lifted one hand without looking at her. The hand said not now. It said the room belonged to her. Mark pushed the ring past Lily's knuckle. Lily inhaled sharply, not from pain, from pleasure. Then Mark turned his face toward me for the first time that night. "Your mother was right," he said. "A husband should stand with the real daughter." The sentence did not echo. Real sentences do not echo when they hurt. They arrive, and everything after them has to decide what it is. I heard a car door close outside. So did my mother. Her eyes flicked toward the front hall. Just once. Then she recovered. She thought it was another late guest. She thought every door in that house still answered to her. I reached into my purse. The room leaned toward me without moving. That is what families do when they expect a scene. They make space for your collapse, then call the space patience, as if waiting for you to break is the same as listening. I took out the empty ring box sleeve and the small photograph. I set the photograph face down beside my plate. I placed the empty sleeve in the center of the china. My mother's smile tightened. "Nora," she said softly. "Not now." That was the trap. The old one. If I answered with pain, she would call it timing. If I answered with anger, she would call it proof. If I reached for Lily's hand, she would call it assault. If I begged Mark, she would call it weakness. So I did none of those things. I stood. My chair did not scrape. I had pulled it back earlier with my foot and left room, because I knew I would need to rise without giving the room a sound to remember instead of the truth. "I have one question," I said. My voice was not loud. It did not need to be. At a family table, calm can travel farther than shouting because no one knows where to put it. Mark looked annoyed first, then worried. Lily closed her left hand around the ring. My mother said, "Sit down." That almost made me smile. After 32 years, her best plan was still furniture. I looked at Mark. "You said a husband should stand with the real daughter." His jaw worked once. Then I looked at my mother. "You said this was a family ring." She did not answer. She only stared at the empty sleeve on my plate. The front doorbell rang. No one moved. My mother's face changed before anything else did. Not fear yet. Recognition of a possibility she had not approved. I walked away from the table. Behind me, my mother said my name the way she used to say it when I was carrying too many grocery bags and still had the wrong one in my hand. Nora. I stopped at the dining room doorway. Then I turned back, just enough for the table to hear me. Then let's ask the woman who gave it. I opened the front door. Grandma Ruth stood on the porch in her blue cardigan, one hand on her walker and the other tucked around the elbow of the family attorney. Rain had silvered the shoulders of his coat. Ruth's hair had come loose at one temple. She looked tired. She also looked exactly like herself. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. That was all. Not a speech. Not an entrance. Just my grandmother, at my mother's front door, using the voice my mother had spent 2 weeks telling me was too weak and too confused to matter. I stepped aside and held the door wide. Behind me, the dining room stayed still in pieces. A fork touched a plate and stopped. A chair leg bumped the rug. Someone took one breath too loudly, and then seemed to regret it. Grandma Ruth came in slowly. I did not pull her. I did not present her like evidence. I walked beside her, and let the room see what my mother had been hiding behind the word tired. When we reached the dining room doorway, my mother was standing. She had one hand pressed to the back of her chair. Her fingers were spread wide, like she could hold the whole evening down by force. "Mother," she said. Ruth looked at her. Then she looked at the table. She saw Mark first. She saw Lily beside him. She saw Lily's left hand curled against her cream dress. Then she saw the ring. That was the moment the dinner broke. Not loudly, not all at once. It broke the way thin ice breaks under one careful step. Everyone heard it, even before anyone moved. Grandma Ruth let go of the attorney's elbow and reached for the edge of the doorway. Her eyes stayed on Lily's hand. "Elaine," she said, "why is Nora's ring on Lily's finger?" No one had to explain which ring. No one had to explain who Nora was. No one had to explain what had been done. My mother opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Lily closed her fist around the ring, and the small square stone disappeared against her palm. That made it worse. It made her look less like a bride, and more like a child caught holding something from a drawer. Mark set his water glass down too fast. The base missed the coaster. Water spread across the linen in a dark, perfect circle. My cousin Carol lowered her napkin from her mouth. Mark's mother put one hand flat against her chest. One of my uncles looked from Ruth to my mother and slowly pushed his chair back an inch, as if he needed more air. I took the empty ring box sleeve from the table. Then I placed it beside Ruth's hand. The attorney stayed quiet for one beat longer than I expected. I understood why. The room needed to see it first. The woman who had given the ring. The granddaughter it had been given to. The sister wearing it. The mother who had arranged the transfer and called it family. Then he spoke. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said to my mother, "who did Ruth give the ring to?" My mother looked at him as if he had used the wrong language in her house. "It is a family ring," she said. That was not my question. His voice was calm, almost dull. A dull voice can be very dangerous when it has the truth behind it. He asked again, a little simpler. "Who did Ruth give the ring to?" My mother's eyes moved to me. She was still looking for the useful daughter, the one who would step in and soften the answer so she would not have to say it. I did not help her. The attorney turned to Mark. "Did Ruth give you permission to place it on Lily's hand?" Mark swallowed. His throat moved once. He looked at Lily, then at my mother. "No," he said. It was the smallest word he had said all night. It was also the first honest one. Grandma Ruth held out her hand. She did not scold Lily. She did not call her names. She did not ask whether Lily knew. Ruth knew the difference between stopping harm and feeding it. "Lily," she said, "take off my ring." Lily's face changed color so quickly it looked painful. Her fingers shook as she pulled at the band. For a second it caught at the knuckle. Mark reached toward her, then stopped. There was no graceful way for him to help remove the thing he had just used to replace me. The ring came free. Lily placed it in Ruth's palm. Ruth closed her hand around it for one breath. Then she set it into the empty box sleeve I had kept all week. The sound was very small. Metal against velvet. That was the sound my mother had not planned for. The attorney opened his leather folder, and placed one sealed envelope on the table. He did not spread out papers. He did not turn the dinner into a lecture. He set the envelope beside the box, close enough that my mother could see her own name printed through the clear window. "Ruth signed the change this afternoon," he said. "Elaine is no longer the paid family representative for Ruth's care account. The restriction went through before dinner." My mother blinked. It was not dramatic. Her face did not collapse like people imagine. It emptied. The shine went out first, then the color around her mouth, then the hand on the chair tightened until the skin over her knuckles looked thin. "That can be reviewed," she said. "It has been witnessed," the attorney said. "It has been delivered. The account is already restricted." My mother looked at Ruth. "Mother, you don't understand what she is doing." Ruth sat down in the chair nearest the doorway. I had left room for her walker there. I had left room because I knew my mother would not. Ruth put the box in front of me. "I understand exactly what she is doing," she said. "She is letting me speak for myself." That sentence hit harder than the envelope. My Aunt Carol made a small broken sound. Mark's mother looked down at her own hands. My cousin pushed the untouched wineglass away from her place setting like it suddenly belonged to somebody else's dinner. My mother turned on me then, not with anger first, with disbelief. "You brought her here for this?" "No," I said. "She came here for this." My voice did not rise. A raised voice would have given my mother somewhere else to point. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone," she said. I looked at the ring box. "No," I said. "You did that before I opened the door." Mark said my name. "Nora." It came out soft. Too soft. The kind of softness people use when they want the room to forget they were cruel 5 minutes earlier. I looked at him. He was still standing beside Lily. That answered the only question left. "I should have talked to you first," he said. "You had dinner to do that," I said. He looked at the ring box, then at my bare hand. "I made a mistake." I nodded once. Not to comfort him. To mark that I had heard it. "Yes." Lily began to cry. Quietly at first. Then with one sharp breath that made everyone look at her again. I did not know how much she had known. I knew enough. She had offered her hand before he asked. She had smiled when my chair was at the end of the table. She had worn the dress. Still, I did not punish her with a speech. Grandma Ruth touched the box with 2 fingers and turned it toward me. "I gave it to the granddaughter who came when there was nothing to gain," she said. The room had no answer for it. My mother tried one more door. "We are family," she said. That word had done a lot of work in our house. It had covered unpaid labor, swallowed apologies, moved chairs, and turned theft into tradition. It had been stretched so far, it no longer looked like shelter. I looked at my mother. "Not tonight." The words landed cleanly. No one rushed to fill the space after them. Aunt Carol wiped under one eye with her thumb. Mark's father stood and took his suit jacket from the back of his chair, then sat back down, as if leaving would make him part of the lie. Lily kept her hands in her lap. Without the ring, the warm ivory polish looked almost childish. The attorney gathered his folder. "The notice is effective now," he said. "Ruth's care bills will be handled through the new arrangement starting tomorrow morning." That was enough. More than enough. I picked up the ring box. I did not put the ring on. Not there. Not in that room. Not with my mother watching to see whether I would turn justice into a performance. I closed the lid. The hinge made the same tired little click I remembered from Grandma Ruth's house. Then I placed the box in my purse, beside the photograph of her hand over mine, and helped my grandmother stand. I did not leave my mother's house in triumph. Triumph is too noisy. It asks for witnesses. I had enough witnesses for one night. I walked Grandma Ruth to the front hall with my hand under her elbow. The attorney carried her folder. Behind us, the dining room was still trying to become normal again. Someone picked up a fork, then set it down. Someone whispered Mark's name. My mother did not follow us at first. She stood at the head of her table with one hand on the chair and one hand hanging empty at her side. By the next morning, the loss had a sound. Her card stopped working for Ruth's care account. I know because she called me at 8:13 and left a message that began with my full name. "Nora Elaine Whitaker, call me back." When my mother used all 3 names, she wanted obedience dressed up as urgency. I did not call back. At 10, the attorney called Ruth. I was there, sitting at her kitchen table, sorting the pill bottles she liked to line up by day. He confirmed the change had gone through. My mother could no longer sign checks from that account. The yearly payment for managing Ruth's care ended. The review of the old charges would happen without me sitting in the middle as a cushion. Ruth listened on speakerphone. When the call ended, she reached into the drawer by the stove and took out a small brass key. "Elaine has the other one," she said. "What is it for?" "The box at the bank." That afternoon, my mother brought the second key to Ruth's porch in a white envelope. She did not come inside. She handed it to me as if I were a clerk who had disappointed her. "This is unnecessary," she said. So was giving my ring away. Her mouth tightened. "You have always known how to make a scene quiet enough that people take your side." I took the envelope. "I'm not taking sides, I'm taking the key." She looked past me into Ruth's house. Grandma was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, and her walker parked beside her chair. My mother saw her. Ruth saw my mother. Neither woman waved. The private hallway was gone. My mother used to turn every hard conversation there before anyone else could hear it. Now the door stayed open. Mark sent flowers on Monday. Not good flowers. Apology flowers. Grocery store roses with their heads wrapped too tight in plastic. The card said, "Can we talk like adults?" I set them on the counter and looked at them while I ate toast. Then I took the card off, put the flowers in water, and sent him one message. "The engagement is over. Do not come by my apartment." He wrote back immediately. "I never meant to hurt you." I believed that. Mark had not meant to hurt me. He had meant to be comfortable, admired, and guided into the version of family my mother kept polished for visitors. Hurting me was just the price everyone else had agreed I would pay. I did not write that to him. I blocked his number after his third message. Lily waited 2 days. Her text was longer. She said she got caught up. She said Mom made everything feel settled. She said Mark was confused. She said she never wanted to take anything that was truly mine. That word did more work than she knew. Truly. I answered once. "Lily, you offered your hand before he asked. I hope one day you ask yourself why." Then I stopped. I did not need to win the sister I had already lost at the table. My mother's apology came last, if you want to call it that. It arrived as a voicemail on Thursday night. "I only wanted what looked best for the family," she said. "You made it look ugly." I sat on the edge of my bed with the phone in my hand. The ring box was on the dresser. I had not opened it since that night. Not because I was afraid of the ring. Because I did not want to turn justice into something I had to wear before I was ready. I called her back the next morning. She answered on the first ring. "Nora." "Mom," I said. "I'll talk with you about Grandma's care when Grandma asks me to. I will not talk about Mark. I will not talk about Lily. I will not come early to fix your dinners. I will not sit at the end of a table to make your story look balanced. You're punishing me." "No," I said. "I'm not available." She breathed into the phone for a long time. "You're my daughter." "I know," I said. "That's why this should have been harder for you." I hung up before she could turn that sentence into a debate. The week after, I moved the last wedding things out of my apartment. The guest book went into the trash. The sample invitations went into recycling. The plain silver band Mark had given me went into a small envelope and back to him with no note. I kept the dress receipt because the store still allowed returns, and I have never believed pain should make a woman bad at paperwork. On Sunday, Ruth came to dinner at my place. My table only seated 4. I liked that. 4 chairs made every choice visible. I made chicken soup, too salty at first, then better after Ruth told me to stop being afraid of pepper. She sat near the window. The blue cardigan was folded over the back of her chair. The missing pearl button was still missing. After dinner, she asked for the ring box. I brought it from my dresser. I also brought the photograph, the one where her hand covered mine, and the box sat between us. Ruth looked at the picture first. "I asked Margaret next door to take that because your mother had a way of misplacing moments that did not serve her," she said. That was the closest Ruth came to sounding bitter. She opened the box and looked at the ring. Then she closed it again and pushed it toward me. "You do not have to wear it because they tried to take it," she said. "I know. You wear it when it feels like yours again." I put the box on the shelf above my little dining table, beside the photograph. It stayed there for months. Some mornings the light touched the stone through the narrow gap in the lid. Some nights I walked past it without looking. A boundary is not revenge. It is the part of love that finally tells the truth. My mother did not become poor, Real endings usually do not work that neatly. She still had her house, her clothes, her church friends, and her talent for arranging a room. But she no longer had Ruth's account. She no longer had the yearly payment. She no longer had the bank key. She no longer had my early arrival, my quiet cleanup, or my habit of making her choices easier to explain. That was enough. The next family dinner happened without me. I heard about it from Aunt Carol, who called under the excuse of asking for Ruth's soup recipe. My mother sat in the middle of the table instead of the head. Lily came alone. Mark did not come at all. No one used place cards. I did not ask for more details. I had seen the ring come off. I had heard the box close. I did not need to stand in the smoke and describe the fire. Months later, I did wear the ring. Not to a party, not on a date, not to make a point in front of my mother. I wore it on a Tuesday, to take Ruth to a follow-up appointment. She noticed in the car before I even started the engine. She took my hand, turned it once in hers, and nodded. "Good," she said. That was the whole ceremony. Family, I learned, is not the person who names you real when there is an audience. Family is the person who shows up at the door when someone has moved your chair and calls the stolen thing by your name. For me, family became an old hand on a walker, a 4-chair table, a ring box that did not have to prove anything, and one Sunday dinner where no one needed me to disappear so the room could feel peaceful. That's my story. 32 years old, 18 places at my mother's table, one empty ring box, one grandmother who still knew exactly whose hand she had chosen. If you have ever been the useful daughter, the quiet sister, or the woman everyone calls when something breaks but no one chooses when something shines, please hear me. You do not have to become smaller to keep a seat that was never offered with love. You are allowed to leave the end of the table. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Tell me in the comments what you would have done when the ring came off. And subscribe if you want more stories about women who win without shouting, without cruelty, and without handing their lives back to the people who tried to rewrite them. My name is Nora Whitaker. I'm 32. I am not the useful daughter anymore. I am the woman who closed the box and walked out with the truth.